With speedrunning becoming more and more popular and more people joining the speedrunning community, there are many individuals who would like to speedrun but feel overwhelmed by the amount of games and categories. For that, I've compiled a list of 5 games I'd suggest to new runners. I want to be very clear, the games listed are those which are best for new runners in my opinion. There are many amazing speedrunning games which I decided to disclude for reasons I'll cover later in the video. I don't intend for this video to act as a catch-all, and for most people, the game which is best for them to run is one which they enjoy and are heavily interested in. As people's preferences are so varied, I also didn't consider a game's genre when researching games for this list, so with that out of the way, let's get right to it. But before I list the games themselves, it's only fair for me to explain how I decided which games to include. I measured each game with a total of 4 metrics: length, difficulty, technicality, and resources. All of these are measurements of how easy it is for a prospective runner to get into the run and attempt a respectable time. Length was the first measurement. Everyone likes to hear about games which take 30 plus hours to beat, yet there's a reason only a few people run these games. A long run is much more difficult to learn and memorize as well as practice. A run that was around 10 to 30 minutes was the goal, and I'll be using the time of scores which were about 1/3 of the way down the scoreboards, as world record runs aren't really reflective of what a new player can expect to accomplish. Second, difficulty. A game which is too easy will be difficult to focus on, while one which is extremely punishing will discourage players from learning. Nothing feels worse than being 75% of the way through a PB pace run and losing it completely, having to restart. Third, we have technicality. While tricks and glitches are one of the most fun things about speedrunning, a game which has several highly technical tricks, each of which require weeks to learn, usually isn't the best for a new player, and it can make them feel gated from even being able to attempt a run. Finally, resources. Few things are as confusing as watching a game you like to run only to see them do some glitch that you can't find information on anywhere. Having an active community as well as access to guides and walkthroughs is one of the most important things for a new runner. And with that, let's get right to it. First up, Cluster Truck. This game is a 3D platformer where the player navigates to a goal line by jumping on top of moving trucks. While the concept is very simple, the speedrun is fantastic, especially for new players. The game is pure movement. Optimizing jumps and platforming, all while managing your abilities, creates a fun and engaging run where creativity and practice can really shine. The length of the run is pretty average, coming in at just around 25 minutes, but there are also individual level or IL runs. This means that if you're daunted by the full game categories, you can run a single section of the game until you're more confident. Cluster Truck is certainly difficult, yet it's fairly forgiving. There are no long load screens or death animations, so most times if you die, you'll only lose around 15 seconds. The game has no glitches or difficult tricks, but there are skips galore. Learning these can be a bit difficult at first, but with a few hours practice on a skip, you should be able to perform it fairly consistently. However, as this game is heavily movement based, you'll definitely need to practice and spend lots of time learning the game itself before jumping into a run. The only thing the game lacks is an abundance of resources. The current community isn't too active, and while there are some guides, you'll probably have to learn from watching runs and attempts trying to emulate what the runners do. All in all, Cluster Truck is a wonderful game to begin with as a new runner, especially if you enjoy movement-heavy 3D platformers. Next, we have Celeste, a 2D platformer where you play as a young girl attempting to summit a mountain. This game is made for speedrunning, as it has extremely tight controls, which reward well-practiced players. I'm not sure if the developers had speedrunning in mind when they developed the game, but if they did, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. A full any percent run lasts around 50 minutes. While this is pretty long for a first-time run, there are IL options which cut down the length of an attempt to around 6 minutes. Celeste is a game which is very difficult, yet forgiving. Dying only costs a few seconds, but the platforming can be extremely difficult and require very precise inputs. So don't be discouraged if at first you're dying far more than your favorite runner. While there are no major glitches which would gate you from attempting a run, it should be noted that the game itself is extremely technical. On some screens, the necessary inputs and timings are very tight. So while you might not be spending hours on end trying to learn a specific glitch or skip, learning the game in itself is a difficult accomplishment, so be prepared to put in the hours if you want to have a competitive time. This game has almost 200 active members, And while there are only a few guides, the forums are extremely active, so if you have questions, you can definitely find the answers there. While some might be discouraged by Celeste's difficulty, its tight and precise controls reward players which have invested time into learning the run. If you're at all interested in running a challenging 2D platformer, Celeste is probably the game for you. Next, Superhot, a unique FPS-style game with a few gimmicks which make it perfect for both new and veteran runners alike. In Superhot, enemies only move when you do. This mechanic allows expert runners to execute levels very quickly and precisely, while allowing new runners to practice pathing and aiming at a pace that suits their needs. The run is exactly the right length for a new runner, with the any percent coming in at just around 25 minutes. This allows you to practice many times in one session without getting bored at a lack of content. Superhot is fairly forgiving when it comes to dying. Failing a level will usually only lose you 10 to 20 seconds. However, the thing that makes this game amazing for new runners is that the game is extremely natural to learn. The fact that time only moves when you do means that you can initially play very slowly in order to memorize the correct movements, actions, and spawn locations of enemies. And as you improve, your times will as well, to the point where you are almost constantly moving. This makes the game very rewarding to practice and learn. There are no real glitches in this game, so learning the run once again comes down to pathing and skill. There is one out-of-bounds glitch on the final level, but it's relatively simple to perform and can be done after a bit of practice. Several speedrun guides exist, and the game has a fairly active community. While you might struggle to find very specific information, most general information is easily accessible. A great deal can be learnt from watching others run as well, since what the runners are doing is generally very visually clear. If you're interested in running an FPS style game, but find other games daunting when it comes to learning and pathing, Superhot may very well be the game for you. HighEnd Time is the second best-selling hat-based platformer of 2017, and it's next on our list. It's a platformer slash collectathon, in which the player completes different objectives in order to collect an hourglass at the end of each level, much like Super Mario 64. There are a variety of hats and badges which the player can equip. All of these give different abilities and can be used in a variety of ways in order to finish levels very quickly. This level of creativity is wonderful for new players who can utilize their equipment to finish a level in a method that suits their playstyle and skill. The any percent run clocks in at just around 55 minutes, which is pretty long for a first time run. However, this game really shines with its IL runs. They're very comprehensive and allow for a lot of creativity with your equipment. Most IL runs clock in at just around a minute, which is far more realistic for a new player to practice. Pathing and proper hat management add a lot of depth and allow runners to grow through proper practice. While failing a level is fairly uncommon, doing so is very punishing, and in some areas you can lose upwards of a minute of progress if you die late in a level. There are only a few notable glitches in this game. Most of these are used in order to skip segments of levels. If you're aiming for a competitive time, you may want to learn these, although since they're usually short skips, it's not strictly necessary. There are several comprehensive guides to this run, including a complete any percent guide and several glitch tutorials. The game also has a very lively community, which should help if you're looking for information about the run. Finally, we have Bastion. Bastion's length is absolutely perfect for a new speedrunner, with the any percent run lasting just around 15 minutes. If this is too short for you, there are some categories which don't skip levels, and those last quite a bit longer at 50 minutes. Difficulty is the only area where this game suffers. Falling or messing up a skip will only lose you around 5 seconds on average, but you need to be able to perform many skips and tricks in order to get a fast or competitive time. As for technicalities, save a few glitches, most are relatively easy and should be able to be performed with a few hours of practice. However, there are many skips which are integral to learn for any category, but once you do, you should be able to begin attempting runs. Unfortunately, the Bastion speedrunning community is no longer active, but there are many guides and walkthroughs for most of the any percent run. There's definitely enough there to get you off your feet should you attempt to learn. Bastion is an entertaining game to run, especially if you enjoy learning skips and glitches. The fact that it's also short helps, as it allows a new runner to get in a lot of practice time. Hopefully, you'll consider trying some of the games on this list, especially if you're trying to get into speedrunning. And if you're interested in a game that I didn't include on this list, please don't be discouraged. There's one factor I neglected to include on here because it's so subjective to each individual runner, and that's fun. If you think you'll enjoy speedrunning a game, then go for it. You probably will. I'll definitely look forward to seeing you on the leaderboards. Hey everyone, what games would you suggest to someone new to speedrunning? Leave your comments down below and discuss. If you enjoyed the video, consider sharing it with friends, and if you'd like to see more speedrun analysis in the future, subscribe because I have a new video every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.